Hello guys, how are you doing? This is your boy Brian coming back to this brand new video. It's always a pleasure to be able to make these videos for you guys and talk about the things that we care about, whether it's football, MMA, and movies. These are things that we care about. That's why we take time to talk about them, share our opinions, and all that. So on this video today, I'm going to be listing out for you guys my top 10 UFC fighters right now. I've been a fan of MMA and UFC especially since I believe 2017 or 2016. So it's probably like 6 to 7 years that I've been watching UFC, and I believe I'm amongst one of the hardest hardcore fans of the UFC of this game. And today I wanted to make my list. Right, I believe it's time for me to make my list of the top 10 UFC fighters right now. Right, so I'm saying right now because if you go back a few years back, that list will probably change, and I'll tell you how that list would have changed by the end of the video. But let's start with the top 10 UFC fighters of Brian right now. So in number 10, my number 10 favorite fighter right now is Tom Aspinall. Right, he's a British fighter. He's very talented. I love the way he conducts himself in in the octagon and outside of the octagon. Besides that, he is a very good stand-up game, a very good boxing. So Tom Aspinall is a very down-to-earth fighter. He doesn't talk smack, and he brings it every time he comes out in the octagon. And he went through a very difficult injury, came back and won in a very interesting and a very beautiful way. So Tom Aspinall is my number 10 favorite fighter right now. Number 9, my number 9 fighter, UFC fighter right now is Tuivasa. Is a how do you say? He's an Australian fighter, a very good fighter with a very good stand-up game. I like his boxing, and I like the way he's just joyful. Outside of the ring, he's a very joyful person, and when he comes in the ring, he brings in he has that spirit, the fighting spirit. Is willing to go toe to toe with the most dangerous fighter in the in the UFC, in the heavyweight division. And Taito Ivasa is my number 9 UFC fighter, and I love it when he drinks from the shoes, right? Even if some fans are sometimes jerked and they do things that are not good. But yeah, Taito Ivasa is one of my favorite UFC fighter, and he stands at number 9 in my ranking right now. Going with my number 8. My number 8 is going to be a little bit controversial, because I know for so many of you out there is maybe your number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and my number 8 is Dustin Diamond Poirier. I love Dustin Poirier. I love his boxing. I love the way he throws his combination when he has his opponent hurt. The way he throws his combination. Dustin Poirier is a very great fighter, and beyond that, he seemed to be a very good man who cares about his community, cares about where he lives with the Dustin his foundation, right? So I'm a very big fan of Dustin Poirier. Just because he's in number 8 doesn't mean that I don't love him, that I don't care about him. I love him, and I watch every single one of his fights. Even the last fight he lost against Gaethje, right? So I'm a very big fan of Dustin Poirier, and he stands in my number 8. Going with my number 7, that I'm going to put in there is a female fighter, Tatiana Suarez. Tatiana Suarez. Who doesn't like Tatiana Suarez? If you don't like Tatiana Suarez, that maybe or probably because you are living under a rock and you don't know about her. She's a very great UFC fighter. I love love how great she is in jiu-jitsu. That girl can submit you from everywhere. She's very dangerous and probably a future champion. And beside the fact that she's a very great and dangerous jiu-jitsu fighter, MMA fighter, she just has also that great personality, and she's a never give up person. She came back after a 3 to 4 years, I believe 3 years layout, injury after injury. She kept fighting and she came back with a win against Jessica Andrade. Who does that? So I love Tatiana Suarez, and she's in my number 7, right, in my ranking as a number 7. So I love her so much. Number 6, my number 6 is so I was thinking like between my number 6 and my number 5, who should I put first? So I ended up putting Alexander the Great in my number 6. Who doesn't love Alexander the Great? I think he's the pound for pound fighter in the UFC, the number 1 pound for pound fighter in the UFC right now. This guy is great. The striking, like, he's a complete mixed martial artist, and yeah, outside of the ring, he's a great chef also. I believe if he wanted to make to create something, he was going to create like a restaurant. He's a great father also. So yeah, Alexander the Great, number 1 pound for pound fighter in the UFC right now for me and for many out there. So Alexander the Great is my number 6. My number 5 is one of like the like all the like 4 opponents of Alexander the Great, and that is Max Holloway. Who doesn't love Max Holloway, the Hawaiian fighter? The guy is just amazing. One of the best, the very best boxers in MMA and in the UFC. The guy is amazing, and in the featherweight division is a legend already in the featherweight division, and overall in the UFC I believe Max Holloway stands as a legend already. He started very young and he's still going. He only has lost like to Alexander the Great over the past few years. Like also, like, I remember the loss against like Dustin Poirier, but I believe in that fight what gave Dustin Poirier the edge is like the power. The power, he had more power, and that gave him the edge. I'm not going to downplay Dustin Poirier, but I believe like both fighters are great. So like, yeah, great. Max Holloway is my number 5 UFC fighter right now. My number 4 UFC fighter right now, going back to the female side, is Valentina Shevchenko. Valentina the Bullet Shevchenko, my number 4 UFC fighter. What can't you love about her, right? What can't you love about her? The way she stands, the way she walks, her charisma, her accent. She's like the whole package. Her fighting style, and I also believe she's very beautiful and sexy. She dresses well, and yeah, my number 4 is Valentina Shevchenko. Now down to my top 3. Let's start with my number 3 UFC fighter right now. That is Usman the Nightmare Kamaru. The Nigerian Nightmare is my number 3 UFC fighter right now, and he has been one of my favorite fighters over the past few years. I love him. I know people like to hate him, and sometimes I understand, but like, for what he has done in the sport and what he has done for Africa, I just love the guy. I believe he's a genuine. He lost the fight to Leon Edward, never made an excuse, and he's still going. He still wants to compete at the highest level despite the injuries that he has in the knee. So I love Usman Kamaru, and the relationship between him and his daughter is just amazing. He's an amazing father. So yes, I am going to name him, and he is my number 3 UFC fighter, Usman Kamaru, right? The Nigerian nightmare. Going to number 2, that is Conor McGregor. Yes, he hasn't fought in a long time, but yeah, still the guy changed the game for the UFC. He's the one who brought me into the UFC. The very first event I watched on TV, live on TV, was his fight against Jose Aldo. And after that, like this, his smack talk, the way he carries himself, the suits, the swag. Conor McGregor is like, yeah, really one of my favorites fighter in the UFC, and has been, right? If you go a few years back, he was probably my number 1 or still my number 2. I love Conor McGregor, and I remember the master class against Eddie Alvarez. I like the second fight against Nate Diaz. That's Conor McGregor, and I still love him till now, enough to have him in my ranking as number 2. So Conor McGregor is my number 2 UFC fighter. And my number 1, you guys know and have guessed, it's the one and only Israel Adesanya. Israel Adesanya. This guy is everything you want a man to be. He is authentic. He doesn't hide like and try to portray himself as a different person. He is who he is, and he's an unapologetic energetic about it. So the guy is an amazing, and beside that, he's one of the most active fighters in the UFC, if not the most active fighter as a champion. So Adesanya Israel is my number 1 favorite fighter, and who doesn't love him? Like, look at his style of fighting, look at the way he moves in the octagon. The guy is everything. I mean, he's everything. The celebration before the fight, like after the fight, the entry, like the guy, I mean, is the like probably the second like most popular UFC fighter right now after Conor McGregor, and I love like Israel Adesanya, and yeah, the guy shows like has no fear, and is willing to face anyone, and yeah, Israel Adesanya is my number 1 UFC fighter. So yeah, just that's my top 10. As I said, like if you go a few years back, before Daniel Cormier retired, he would have probably been my number 1. I love the way Daniel Cormier used to fight, and the way he used to carry himself outside and inside the octagon. His competitiveness, the way like he would, like the guy would cry after losing, and people would think that it's like he's a man and they shouldn't cry. But that shows that the level of competition that Daniel Poirier was in, only lost to 2 people in the MMA, and so those 2 people are some of the greats, John Jones and Stipe Miocic. So Daniel Cormier would have been in my list had he had not retired, or if you go a few years back. Also, one person that is on my like dishonorable mention right now is like Ian Gary. I was really liking him. I think he would have been maybe my top 10, or he would have been in my honorable mention, but I just had to remove him because in his last fights he did great. He's a great competitor, but I didn't like the way he carried himself with the whole controversy with Neil Magny. I believe Neil Magny. Like the guy saying that, like, even like I believe parents have the right to slap their kids and educate them with like a small slap or something, like beating a kid. I believe the only people who have the right to do so for the love of their children is the parents. I believe the parents should have the right to beat their kids, not just like, not hurt them, but beat them to educate them. And educating a kid is very difficult. So if you believe that a parent should not beat a kid or like slap a kid, that's you. That doesn't mean that you should impose that on someone or try to get someone consent for doing so. I grew up in a family where my father would slap me every once in a while if I did something wrong, something that could have like been worse for me, right? So that was his way of doing so. Punishing, yes, also works, but yeah. So I believe Gary is a very good fighter. I love the way like he fights, but for that alone, I don't have him on my rankings. But let's just finish this video right now, and I will not talk too much. I don't care if I get cancelled for saying that. Yeah, I believe parents should have the right to smack their kids every once in a while if it's for the